The wedding was in my front yard, and my wife was the bride, and I was still wearing my prison bracelet because they had not cut it off at the bus station yet. I got off the Greyhound at 8:04 in the morning. I walked the 6 blocks to my house in the plastic slides they give you, carrying everything I owned in a clear bag. My white t-shirt was 2 sizes too big, and there were white folding chairs set up all over my dead front grass. There was a little wooden arch covered with cheap grocery store flowers, and Lena, my wife, was standing directly under it in a blue dress I had bought her 3 years before I went in, kissing a man who was not me. Our daughter Sophie was standing off to the side, holding a small bouquet of flowers. She was 9 years old now. She was only 4 the last time I held her in our kitchen. Lena opened her eyes and saw me standing on the sidewalk. Her face did this terrifying thing where all the blood just instantly drained out of it, leaving her looking completely hollow. I did not go to federal prison because I am an inherently good man. I went to prison because I am not very smart when it comes to love. 5 years ago, Lena was working as the primary office manager for Garrett Construction. Mr. Garrett was a highly respected, decent older guy who built massive custom homes around Albuquerque. Lena handled his payroll and all the subcontractor invoices. That same year, her mother was put on dialysis, and the clinic abruptly told us her health insurance stopped covering the required at-home machine. It was going to cost $9,000 out of pocket. Lena did not tell me about the money. Instead, she sat at her work computer and started moving company funds. It was not a lot at first. She was just rounding up material invoices and creating a fake vendor account called Desert Sand that simply did not exist. Over 8 months, she quietly transferred $47,000. A third-party auditor caught the discrepancy. The police came to our front door on a Thursday evening. Lena was locked in the bathroom, throwing up into the toilet. Sophie was sitting on the living room rug watching cartoons. "Mrs. Ruiz, we need to talk to you about some missing funds," the lead detective said through the closed door. I looked at Lena through the crack in the doorframe, and I instantly knew. She had the exact same look on her face from when she was 17 and got caught shoplifting a jacket at Target. It was pure, suffocating panic. "It was me," I said, stepping into the hallway to block the bathroom door. I told her to do it. I know how to use QuickBooks. I showed her exactly how to hide the transfers. It was a complete lie. I barely knew how to check my own email account. But Lena had a lingering misdemeanor from when she was 19. If she got arrested, she would lose her job, we would lose the house, and her mother would likely die without the medical equipment. I had absolutely no criminal record. I worked hard as a residential electrician. I genuinely thought I would just get probation, and we would figure out a way to pay the money back. The detective looked at my face, pulled out a pair of metal cuffs, and told me to sit down on the couch. Mr. Garrett did not actually want to press charges at first, but his corporate accountant explained that if he did not file a formal police report, he could not legally claim the massive financial loss on his business insurance. So he filed the paperwork. My overworked public defender told me to take a 5-year plea deal, promising I would only do 3 if I kept my head down. He warned me that if we went to trial and lost, the judge would hit me with 9 years. Lena begged me not to sign the plea. She sat across from me in the cold interrogation room, grabbed my hands across the metal table, and cried. "Please do not do this to yourself," she whispered. I thought she meant she did not want me to leave her alone. I thought taking the fall and protecting my family was what real love was supposed to look like. During my first year inside, she wrote me a letter every single week. She brought Sophie to the crowded visitation room where you sit behind the glass and you are not allowed to touch. Sophie would press her small hands against the glass and hold up crayon drawings of our house. By the second year, the letters slowed down to once a month. Her mother passed away. Mr. Garrett actually paid for the funeral expenses. He also started paying for Sophie's after-school care program because Lena had to take a second job cleaning houses just to buy groceries. By the third year, the letters completely stopped. I tried to call home, but the automated operator said the phone number was disconnected. My own mother eventually wrote me a short letter explaining that Lena had moved out of our house. The bank had officially foreclosed on it. She said Sophie was healthy, but that was all she knew. By the 4th year, I stopped writing letters entirely. So when I walked up to that yard and saw the wedding, my first thought was not actually anger or confusion. It was just simple math. Of course she married someone else with a steady paycheck. Of course someone else bought the house I had wired with my own hands. What else was she supposed to do to survive while I was sitting in a cell counting cinder blocks? Mr. Garrett turned around and saw me standing on the sidewalk. He was significantly bigger than I remembered, and his hair was completely gray. He did not look scared or angry. He just walked across the dead grass toward me with a very calm, tired expression. "Cole," he said quietly. "That is my house," I said, dropping my clear plastic bag onto the sidewalk. "I know it is," he replied, keeping his voice low. "And that is my wife standing up there now. Do you really want to make a scene out here in front of your daughter?" Sophie was staring at me from the archway. She did not recognize me at all. She actually took a step back and hid behind the fabric of Lena's blue dress. "You were supposed to get out next year," Lena said, her voice shaking across the yard. "The parole board told me next March. Good behavior," I answered. We stood there in the heavy silence, 4 adults and a bunch of empty folding chairs, while the neighbors watched from their front porches. Lena started crying. It was not a pretty, composed cry. It was that hard, ugly crying she does where she physically cannot catch her breath. "Come inside the house," Garrett said, turning around. "Do not do this out here in the street." I followed them inside. The house smelled strongly of fresh paint. My house. I looked down the hallway and saw that he had patched and painted the hole in the drywall where Sophie had thrown a heavy toy truck years ago. Garrett walked into the kitchen, sat me down at the island, and told me the absolute truth. That was the moment the entire situation broke in half for me. "I have pancreatic cancer," Garrett said, resting his heavy hands on the counter. "Stage 4. The doctors gave me 6 months, maybe 8 if the treatment holds." I just stared at him, completely lost. "When Lena's mother died and you were locked up, she came to my office and begged me to let her pay the money back slowly so the bank would not take this house," he explained. "She was cleaning random houses until midnight. Sophie was sleeping on the floor of my office because Lena could not afford daycare. I sat there and realized the $47,000 was absolutely nothing compared to what I had blindly spent on my lake boat that same year. I felt sick to my stomach about pressing those charges. He told me he had called the district attorney and tried to get them to drop the case, but the state refused to let it go. So he did the only thing he could think of to fix the damage he caused. He tracked the foreclosure and bought the house back from the bank at the county auction, paying significantly more than it was actually worth. He tried to put the deed into a trust for them, but his lawyer warned him that setting up a massive financial trust for the wife of the man who supposedly robbed him would look incredibly suspicious to the IRS. "So my lawyer told me the easiest way was to just marry her," Garrett said. "When I die in a few months, this house, the life insurance, and the remaining assets all go directly to her as my legal spouse. No legal contest, no heavy estate taxes. And Sophie immediately gets to be on my premium health insurance." He coughed heavily into his elbow and looked at me. "I asked her to do it, Cole," he said. "I promised her I would never touch her. I told her I would sleep in the guest room until I pass. I just wanted to fix one thing in this world before I go." She said yes. I looked over at Lena. She was standing by the sink, nodding her head, tears running freely down her face and into her mouth. "I did not marry him because I stopped loving you," she cried, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "I married him because I was completely drowning, and he threw me a house to keep us afloat. I thought you were going to be in that cell until Sophie was 12 years old. I thought you would hate me for ruining your life anyway." She admitted she had secretly written to the parole board and explicitly asked them not to notify me of her new address because she was a coward. She thought if I came home and saw another man in the yard, I would just get angry and leave, and she would never have to look me in the eye and explain the mess she made. Sophie walked into the kitchen and stood right next to Garrett's chair. She wrapped her arms around his waist and looked up at him. "Are you okay, Pop?" she asked him. That was the actual gut punch. It was not the wedding arch in the yard. It was hearing my own daughter call another man Pop. I had served 5 brutal years in a concrete box for a crime my wife committed, genuinely thinking I was saving my family. And the devastating truth was that I did save my family. I just did not save them for me. Garrett looked at my face and stood up from the stool. "I will call a judge and annul the paperwork right now," he said firmly. "If you want to come home today, this is your home. You built half of this place. I can sign the deed over to you by tomorrow morning. I only have maybe 6 months left on this earth, Cole. You have your entire life." I stood in the kitchen I had designed. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to punch him in the jaw, grab my wife in her blue dress, pick up my kid and take my life back. But I looked down at Sophie. She looked healthy and safe. She had teeth that were properly brushed, sneakers that actually fit her feet, and a warm house that was freshly painted. And she had an older man standing next to her who looked at her like she was the most important thing in the world. "No," I said quietly. I looked at Lena. "You did exactly what you had to do to survive," I told her. "Just like I did." I reached into Sophie's open school backpack on the table, pulled out a pair of safety scissors from her pencil box, and cut the thick plastic monitoring strap off my ankle. I left the black bracelet sitting on the kitchen counter I had tiled myself, picked up my clear plastic bag, and walked out the front door. I live in a small one-bedroom apartment over a noisy car wash now. I managed to get my journeyman electrician license reinstated by the state. Garrett called my cell phone last month and offered me a high-paying foreman job on one of his new commercial sites. I took the job. I did not take it for him, and I did not take it for my own pride. I took it for Sophie. She comes to the dusty job site on Saturday mornings now. She wears a yellow hard hat, hands me wire nuts when I ask for them, and she finally calls me Dad again. She actually calls both of us Dad now, depending on who she is looking at. She is still figuring it all out. Lena still wears that blue dress sometimes. She does not wear it for Garrett. He sleeps down the hall in the guest room exactly like he promised he would. She wears it whenever she drives Sophie over to my apartment for dinner. I served 5 years in prison for my wife. I came home on a bus and found her marrying another man in my front yard. And for the very first time since I sat in that cold interrogation room and told the police it was me, I finally understand what real sacrifice actually looks like when you are not the only one making it.